Today, we have a powerhouse in the world of sales and marketing, Debra. With decades of experience, she's helped businesses craft high-impact strategies that drive real results. But here's the twist. She's not just about quick fixes and trending hacks. She's about long-term strategy. In this episode, Debra will help content creators like you stop chasing algorithms and start building a sustainable marketing plan. If you're tired of posting endlessly with little to no return, this is the episode you need.
Yeah. Before we even go into the topic, I like to ask a couple of questions so my audience kind of knows who they're listening to.
Perfect.
Yeah. What inspired you to start Hexagon Media after 25 years in industry?
Was actually a kind of a long time coming. I had come to a place in my life where I was really lost. My marriage had fallen apart in 2020. Children had all been grown and left the nest. I raised 5 kids. And I took care of my mom after she was diagnosed with cancer for 5 years, and my mother passed away. And I was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, my mother passing away. But it was the catalyst for me to change my life. I had really lost myself in how I raising kids and really doing what was necessary, the path of least resistance in many ways, right?
Yeah.
So that here I sat, I didn't have anybody left to take care of except for myself, and I didn't really know how to do it. So I started a process of self-discovery where I just had to figure everything out again. I was really lost. I was in grief, just really grief-stricken, and I was just bringing food home from my little temp job and sitting on my bed and eating it, and I really wasn't participating much in life. And so I made some non-negotiable boundaries with myself and started with 1, I'm not going to eat fast food, and 2, I'm not going to eat in my bedroom. Now I'm going to be out and about. I learned how to cook at a very young age when I had to stand on a chair to reach a stove. So that was a big step. And then really just getting back to the things that I really loved, which was marketing and advertising and promotions and sales. And so that really prompted me to start Hexagon Media and get back to my roots. But I didn't want to do it with a bunch of corporate clients. I wanted to be able to really help small businesses use marketing strategy and not get stuck with content creation that doesn't sell anything, for example. And then a year after I started my agency, I started my own podcast, and I feel great. I spent a lot of time in counseling and a lot of time in meditation and self-reflection and personal growth. And I can tell you that today I am more in my own skin than I have been in a couple of decades. It feels really good to have made it through to the other side and be living my life and what I choose to do. And it feels fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. If you had to describe your marketing philosophy in 1 sentence, what would it be?
It would be my marketing strategy really revolves around making sales and building revenue. And that seems silly to say it that way, but a lot of people aren't focused on whether or not you're actually getting sales. They're just making content. So for me, that's the difference. It's the accountability factor that comes with the plan, right? I made the plan, I implemented the plan, and did the plan bring the results that I planned for?
Yeah. Earlier on, I told you that we'll be talking about marketing strategy that works and all that. What would you say is the difference between strategy versus tactics?
So I like to think about it in terms of, let's say this time I'll use a forest, okay?
Yeah.
And when you're thinking about a forest has lots of different kinds of trees. It's got other vegetation, it's got animals, it's got all of the things in there. But even if we just focus on trees, tactics are the individual trees. There's oak trees, there's asp trees, there's rubber trees, there's cottonwoods, there's all different kinds of trees. And you can walk in and you can just say, you know what, I really, really like oak trees. I'm just going to plant a bunch of oak trees in my forest. But just because they're the trees that you like doesn't mean that you're planting them in the right place where they're going to get the right amount of water and the right amount of sunshine, and that they're not being shaded by another taller tree, and that they have all the nutrients that they want, and that they're not getting pests because of the other trees in the forest. So
Yeah.
the same is true of tactics. You might have one tree, and that is social media. And then you have another tree, and that social media tree, social media, that's a really popular tree. Social media is really popular. There's a lot of people on social media.
Yeah.
But maybe your target audience is businesses. Maybe you don't want that tree in your forest. So the whole forest, knowing which trees to plant in your forest, which ones are going to survive, which ones are going to thrive, how much water each one needs, what sunshine they need, which ones help each other by shading one that needs shade and the other one gets all of the sun, which one get the nutrients, which one protects the other from pests. See how they all work together. All of the trees, the animals in the forest all work together to survive and live and thrive. So the entire forest is the strategy. And all of the little parts that are in the forest, the trees, the vegetation, the animals, the pests, those are the tactics. So your strategy is deciding which tactics are we going to plant in our forest? Where are we going to expand the forest? Where should we plant? Which tactics should we run together? Which ones are always going to be there?
Yeah.
That is really the way it works. Now, it doesn't mean that if you decide social media is for you, that you don't need a social media strategy that goes with it. You do. But what I find is that when I'm working with a client, maybe they've been doing a lot of social media and they have a social media strategy. The problem is that they're on the wrong platform, and their specific target audience isn't on that platform. They're on a different platform. Maybe they're on LinkedIn. And so they're on the wrong platform, using the wrong messages, just getting vanity eyeballs. Yeah, you got a lot of followers, but does it matter how many you have if none of them are people that are ever going to buy from you? Then you just have numbers for having numbers.
Yeah.
So for me, trying to describe it in a way that people can understand the difference, I definitely think most people, when you think about marketing, they think of a tactic. They think of, or a platform. So they think of Facebook or Google or search or email. And they don't think of it as your overall plan, not just which tactics are you going to use while you're promoting, but what's your pricing strategy? Are you the low cost provider? Are you going to be cheaper than everybody else by plan, by design? Because if you are, then you can't provide this whole top high end service because you can't turn customers fast enough. And so those kinds of strategies in the macro, in the overall picture of how we're forming our company and how we're going to operate in a marketing sense is important because it determines how you need to do everything else and how to build your strategy. And that's a really important part of branding that often gets left out because it doesn't have anything to do with how your brand looks visibly. It has to do with what are your values? Some people can't be the provider because they can't whittle down that service to such a small level that you have to make money as the low cost provider. So all of those things be considered too.
Yeah. I think a lot of content creators, because everybody tells everybody be everywhere, you have to be seen for people to know, like, and trust you. A lot of content creators feel like they have to do everything to grow. How can they avoid these burnouts while still marketing effectively?
I would say my big thing is unless you're planning on being an influencer and you're planning on garnering millions of views so that you can be an affiliate and sell products, if you're not doing that, which the majority of us aren't, then your content has to have a purpose. It doesn't feel like you need to be everywhere, and it's kind of the content creator's fault for promoting that as a strategy. So if I come to you and I tell and ask you what your target audience is and you say anybody with a house, well, if you tell me that, then I'm going to say, well, let's, dig in deeper and build further. What kind of house? How old? How many people live there? You can start asking those detailed questions. But most content creators are going to think about it in terms of well, we better make a lot of content so we can be sure that your specific target sees it. And so they kind of get in that of let's just blast it everywhere so that we know that you're seen by everyone, when we don't really need to be seen by everyone. We only need to be seen by the people that are most likely to buy our services. So if you're selling something business to business, like I sell services, I sell advertising and marketing services to another business. So if somebody wanted to just blast me out all over Facebook everywhere, one, that's probably going to be expensive to make all that content and to
Yeah.
advertise to get that much of it. And realistically, how many of those people own businesses? And how many of them are in my geographic area? And so the most important thing is, are the people that see the message the ones that are most likely to buy the products and services you're offering? And if they're not, then that's content you can eliminate towards them. So that whole just be everywhere kind of philosophy, one, isn't attainable. It's impossible to make that much content and post that much content on all of those platforms as a small business owner, whether you're doing it yourself or you're hiring it. That's expensive. And you don't have time to actually run your business if you're trying to do all of that yourself. So
Yeah.
whittling down and saying, okay, maybe it is anyone with a house, but I really only want the people in these 7 zip codes, and I really only want them if they own a home over this amount of money. If it's not over $400,000, then I don't want them. So now you can start narrowing that down and deciding, is social media even the place where I should be if I have to reach hundreds of thousands of people that are never going to buy my product just to reach a few that will? It's so
Yeah.
wasteful. Wasteful, not
Yeah.
just of dollars. A lot of people will think, oh, well, it's free content. We're just posting, so it's not wasteful of money. But it is, because it's wasteful of your time and it's wasteful of your content dollars. It's wasteful of your message and the energy that goes into it. So getting a content creator, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you're someone that your client hired, really getting down on the individual targets that of your client's customers, that's important. And don't let them get away with giving you something big and vague. You got to really whittle it down. So now you know if you've singled out income so that the people that can afford your services are the ones that you're sending it to. And maybe you only want households with women in it because it's a feminine product. So getting all of that, now you're only making that specific content. So you're reduced the amount of waste, and that's also time that you wasted making all of the content.
Yeah. One of the key takeaways I get from what you've said so far is the fact that it's not about getting rich. It's not about getting eyeballs. It's about getting the right eyeballs and the right reach.
That's really, if like I'm a business owner, and it's great to see that you get a bunch of likes and engagement on one of your posts, but I would much rather not. I'd much rather get 5 likes if one of them's somebody I actually get to speak to and potentially sell
Yeah.
my services to. That's really the only thing that matters. And I do
Yeah.
think there's a disconnect between hiring a content creator that makes great video and content, and their main goal is to get a bunch of eyeballs, because that is really a goal towards monetization of content for pure content. And
Mm.
you and I, you have a podcast, you know how difficult that is to
Yeah.
just make money on the content alone. There are
Yeah.
definitely people that do it, and it's hard to maintain. I've known people and had people that I consulted with that had videos that went viral, but maintaining it is how you make money off of content. You got to make more than one that reaches that many people. You got to have
Yeah.
a strategy to all out. But that strategy is infinitely different than what someone for a small business should use.
Yeah. Yeah. And also
Right.
keeping in mind that so far from what you said is small businesses and small content creators, they have limited resources. And so it's very important that we look at the drawing board and ask ourselves, what's the best use of the resources?
Yes. I mean, lots of people are struggling. I don't know about in Nigeria, but here definitely in the United States, we've had lots of price increases and everyone's kind of struggling to find budget to spend in different things. In fact, some of us partner together. I have a great guy who does online payment systems, credit card processing, and he can save people money. So if he can save someone money, that's money they can spend with me for advertising. So we've all had to
Yeah.
kind of band together to do that. But even if my client had lots and lots of money, it's just in my nature to want to spend it efficiently so
Yeah.
that it's so easy to waste marketing dollars these days. In fact, I meet with people all the time that have spent tens of thousands of dollars on usually it's social media of some sort and have not gotten any sales. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of times it's targeting. Maybe they're not supposed to be on social media at all. Oftentimes that's what it is, but they've gone to a social media agency who's going to find a social media solution, just like a surgeon finds a surgical solution rather than a
Yeah.
medical. It's very similar to that same thing. And you can't blame the social media company for taking the business, although they had to have known it was short term because
Yeah.
oftentimes it's obvious that social media may not be the exact place for them to be on, but it's hard to stay
Yeah.
away from that business, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we just, so not every problem is a money problem. Sometimes you just have to like step back and ask yourself what's wrong, not necessarily throwing more money at the problem in order to solve it.
Right. Instead of maybe you're just spending the money in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Maybe and really the key performance indicators that you hear a lot from marketing people about, such as click-through rate, number of impressions, engagement, all of those numbers are kind of the echo chamber where marketing people show that they've done a good job. And
Yeah.
I mean that kind of in jest because for me, there's only one key performance indicator that matters, and that's did they get some business from it? Did they see a lift in revenue? And if they
Yeah.
didn't, the key performance indicators help us know where the break in the sales cycle is. So if your advertising is generating a ton of clicks to your specific website, a ton of traffic to your website, but we're not generating leads for you to speak to, then the funnel's messed up. Something on the
Yeah.
website funneling them in. If you're
Yeah.
just a lot of engagement or you're getting a lot of impressions, but no one's clicking on any of it, then we have a messaging problem or maybe a targeting problem. And then if you
Yeah.
make it all the way to the website and they actually schedule and they get to you and they don't, and then you can't sell it. Now, is it a closing problem? Is it a sales skill issue? Or do we have a value problem that we need to look at from that pricing perspective? So those key
Yeah.
performance indicators are important, but they are not a good gauge of whether or not we're doing our job right. It tells
Yeah.
us part of it right, and then it
Yeah.
helps decide, right? It's an ongoing process. I love it when we finally get the magic formula, whatever that may be for a client, and they're getting tons of calls, and their CFO says, "Okay, which of these things is working so I can cancel the rest?"
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know if they're working together for success. Don't muck it up, right? Let it
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
is so used to one of pick one thing and it'll work. And boy, wouldn't life be easier if that were the case? Once it happens,
Yeah. I mean,
change.
I mean that's a good strategy, but it's not always the best.
Well, it just doesn't, once you find it and it works, Google changes the algorithm or whatever else, the customer perception changes or different colors become popular, whatever it may be, there's always the guarantee that no matter if it's good or bad, it's going to change.
Yeah.
So always being prepared for how are we going to pivot and what's next? What's the next step we're going to? In fact,
Yeah.
I prefer to really do campaigns. So pick one of your target audience. So let's say I like to work with tradespeople. So your plumbers and your roofers and your tree arborists and all of those. I like to work with them. I ran a construction company in a former life when I was young. Yep, had young children. And so I know a lot about that section and I do well with them because of that. So let's say I want to do a campaign and I'm going to focus on tradespeople.
Yeah.
Tradespeople blue collar. They're on different websites than attorneys are, for example. So I like to say, hey, for this next 6 weeks or 2 months or however long it is, this is what I'm targeting. And all of my stuff is targeted towards getting new tradespeople. Then those aren't the only clients I have. I like others too. So then I move on to another campaign for another target demo and I work that one. And so if you plan to work each one separately, then your message is targeted and where you're posting the message is targeted towards that specific group instead of trying to do it all at once. And then you kind of get a feel for it. Once you've gone through a year, you're like, oh yeah, that Mother's Day campaign really worked for this group. Let's do that again. When you're planning for the next year, you kind of have this is when we always go after this group and it works really well. Or last year, it wasn't very responsive. How can we switch it up and put a different target in this place? So I prefer to do it that way so that we're targeting one, because no one has just one specific group. You can always get that down into subcategories. And not everybody that owns a house is on the same social media platform, nor on any at all sometimes, nor are they the same age group. So jumbling it all up in together is a great way to waste money because your message can only be targeted a little bit. You've got 3 seconds. So you're quick and baiting them in quickly. And that message isn't always going to be the same for the same people, even if the product's the same.
Yeah, I like the fact that your approach towards marketing is test and test, right? It's not just about, okay, this is what's supposed to work. It's more like, okay, will this work? Maybe this will work. Let's test it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we pivot and move to something else.
That's what you got to do. Because just because something might work on another platform for another person does not mean that it will work for you necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just, and there's a certain thing there's a whole group that didn't, so I do sales like buying personality coaching. So the psychology of selling. If I know how you like to communicate, then I can better communicate my message to you in a way that you're more likely to understand and buy. And there's a lot of different variations of it, but I've been doing it for about 20 years. And we had to add in a whole nother section of people. And it really comes off of the emotional group. So people that make decisions based on how things make them feel. Like, it's easy to market to somebody who's going to make an emotional decision. But this group of people are people that respond to social proof, not just testimony, right? It's like the testimonials we always grouped in with the thinkers because they want more information. They're going to think about it. They're going to research it. And so testimonials would fall typically over in with those thinkers. But social proof's different because an influencer, they say they've tried it. That doesn't mean they've really tried it. And it's not necessarily that always. It's somebody that you saw online that made a good video. There's this like people will try something simply because it worked for somebody else. So that's social proof, even if it isn't a good fit for what they're offering. They'll still try it. That oversteps empirical data for that one group. Even if I can prove to you that it's a terrible idea for you to run television advertising, if somebody else, you've seen a video of somebody else that it worked for, there's a group of people that will not let that go. And that is a new thing that is out there in how people respond on social media. It's a new group of people. And now there's some, some people that don't trust anything they see. AI is making it by like, oh, I don't know for sure. So I think that's a little ever changing still, but there are a group of people that are really influenced their buying decisions based on social proof, not just testimonials from actual users of the product.
Yeah, I'd love for us to get personal a bit, right? I noticed you have a podcast called Deals with Heels, right? Can you tell us what the podcast is about? More like a 30 seconds elevator pitch of what the podcast is about.
Deals with Heels is an female empowerment entrepreneurial podcast We really talk about small businesses and how they grow and scale, and it's presented from women, so it has a female perspective, although the entrepreneurial business information, of course, is great information regardless.
Yeah, yeah. How does like what inspired you to start that podcast, and how does it like tie into the overall scheme of things?
I had only kind of fleetingly thought about maybe starting a podcast. It wasn't something that was immediately on my radar, but I met a woman out networking for my business, and she was networking for her business. And then we had a one-on-one together, which, of course, a crucial step for finding referral partners. And she and I just clicked. We had chemistry. We were just immediately comfortable with one another. She's about 20 years younger than me, but I can't really explain it, Wisdom. Honestly, I just one day asked her if she wanted to start a podcast with me. Was
Wow.
serendipity, was just God just putting the right people together at the right time. And unbeknownst to me, having a podcast was one of her lifelong dreams.
Wow.
And so the two of us getting together and starting Deals with Heels was really just something that was meant to be. And we were together for 2 seasons. And then at the end of season 2, she had to she had to step away completely from the podcast. And we talk about on my podcast a lot, how do you pivot? What happened when you came up upon an obstacle in your life? What did you do? How did you pivot? And oftentimes that guest has made it through, written a book, is coaching about it, or, it's a success story. And so it's really important message we want to hear, but it's often pretty far out from it actually happening. And so when she came to me and needed to step away and not be part of the podcast anymore, I could have stopped. I could have, I was in a full studio we were paying for out of pocket. And so I was there. Then I will have to pay if I stay there. I already did the show content, but so all of that process of how I was going to figure out what I was going to do to move forward was
Yeah.
really cathartic, and it just happened. Episode 50 is the first one with me as solo host, and I talk about how I went through that process, how I got the confidence, the things that happened, the things that God put in my path to show me that I could do it, the things that I discovered just editing and different upgrades to different types of software that could do parts more easily. And then I ended up putting a studio in my house, an amateur studio in my house where I office, and brought it all in house. It's been an ever-changing kind of process with one challenge after another. And I hate to even admit it, I wasn't really an avid podcast listener even. I
Wow.
listened to some, but I think a lot of people that want to get into podcasting listen and are active, involved, and are fans of specific shows. And truly, mine was just a blessing, just something that it just came out of my mouth and we just did it. I'm
Yeah.
a on challenge mindset. So once we set the date, it was on. It's happening now. We've set the date. So I worked through it again and ended up keeping the name and rebranding as solo host, and I'm doing it by myself. So I think the lesson is that sometimes when something pops in, you just realize that God's given you grace of something that you're supposed to do because
Mhm.
it is my passion. I am good at it. I love it. I love helping other women find their voice. It took me a long time to find mine again. And
Yeah.
so it's a huge blessing in my life that just serendipity and timing and right people coming into my life at the right time, the right skill set coming into my life at the right time, me listening to those little nudges and intuitions and accepting the challenge of learning something. So
Yeah.
that's the mindset piece.
Yeah.
And that's what I changed when I was at the very bottom after my mother died was how am I going to move forward? What does my mindset need to be for me to be able to not be triggered by everything that's happening around me, for example. So
Yeah.
the podcast, seriously, what a blessing. I could not be more grateful to have it in my life and for the wonderful people that I've met and learned from just hosting. And I'm such a rookie still. I think I've got 67 episodes in the can and I'm still a rookie, right? I'm still
Co- com- com-
sure.
coming from you.
But I mean, I have been a guest on podcasts that have 2,000 episodes and big, huge numbers, and I am just like bowed down to the king because
Yeah,
I'm so proud of myself for breaking 50 and breaking 60 and all of the small milestones. And so, for all of your listeners that are out there, if you even think about starting a podcast, then that is definitely an option that's in your future, in your soul's future. You just have to make that decision and then start taking the steps to see. And software's come a long way for editing.
yeah. Like AI has it made a lot of process seamless and faster.
It was perfect timing, honestly, for me to be able to just click buttons and it remove breaths and me not have to agonize over editing every little piece because I'm definitely not great with tedious things like that. So that was a big step, just figuring out that, hey, it might not be as difficult as you think it is. So I
Yeah,
really encourage anyone out there listening, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a business, whether it's write a book, whatever it is, paint a painting. I started painting in my fees and discovered a hidden talent that I never knew I had.
yeah. I think that will probably be an episode of another day.
Well, I tell you, I was such a big math nerd. I mean, I've always been creative, but visually creative, seriously, I was in my mid 50s before
Yeah,
I discovered I could do anything like that. And I can't explain how I can do it, but I can definitely do it.
yeah. And for me, it's the fact that most persons never get to find that.
Most people don't. It's like I think it's a combination of fear of failure and then just the whole not wanting to try something new. And they've proven that there's a part of your brain that keeps you young, and the way you keep it young is by doing things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
said, well, I've been doing a bunch of stuff I don't want to do, like dishes and chores
yeah,
and bookkeeping and the business of life. So
yeah,
now when I do it, I'm like, you're just keeping yourself young.
yeah.
It's all about
Uh,
mindset, friend.
Yeah, I like the fact that for most of the when I asked you about your podcast, for most of the things you talked about, it's as though you were reading my mind. You just answer questions I wanted to ask, right?
Oh, so I'm stealing your questions away too, right?
No, it kind of makes it seamless. Like it makes everything go
It does.
faster, so I don't have to like ask those questions. But the question I want to ask is currently now, like for most persons listening, they might have a podcast and they're like, well, how do I get to balance? For me, I believe that what we work on works on us, right? So how do I get to balance while I'm working on this thing as much as it's important to me? How do I also get to balance it with the metrics I want to see, like, download numbers, sales conversion, and all those other things?
Being able to promote your podcast and get part of
Yeah.
that's
So,
part.
so it's more like, how do you promote your podcast?
So a couple of things. One of the biggest ways to grow your podcast is to be a guest on other people's podcasts. And
Wow.
it's something that I was very poor at. Season one, I didn't do it at all, not even one time. I wasn't even sure how to do it, how to find it, and because I wasn't really prolific listener of podcasts. And so I had my ones that I liked, but I didn't necessarily do anything with you know, with very much of them. I didn't interact as much. And my dogs are barking. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um, but I figured it out. And season two, I worked on my own personal branding. And then I was able to really market myself because part of being a guest isn't just at what you have to offer and say. Part of it's who you are and how you talk and what you talk about and what your story is and how you appeal to multiple genres of podcasts. All of that
Mhm.
brand. helped me be able to be a guest, and that helped. And then having guests. I had a co-host for 2 seasons, and so we could talk without a guest. And so we only had, I think, maybe 4 or 5 guests all of season 1. And so, well, that's not very good strategy for growing your podcast unless you and your co-host have a huge following already that are just going to jump on the podcast bandwagon. And so those 2 things are really important. Then one of the things that I do a lot of is digital paid advertising. Those are the banner ads that you see on websites and apps that you use regularly. And they're usually clickable. You can click to that company's website, and I can give you a great example that everyone will recognize. And those are digital search ads. Those are the ones that when you search for something you want to buy, like a new laptop, and then suddenly you have those display ads show up on the internet and on website and on apps for that item. And everyone's like, oh, they're spying on us. They know that I'm searching for that or that I want to buy that. And you're 100% right. They do know. And those ads, I like to use those digital ads because they know and because we're able to do targeting. My problem when I was promoting the podcast was, where does it click to? They won't let you click YouTube. YouTube's off limits. And I can click to my website, but still to listen, they've got to at least click one more time on whichever platform I've got. And so the more cumbersome you make it for them to do what you want them to do, higher the chance they're going to click out and not finish. So I host at Spotify. So if I had it go to my Spotify page and you're an Apple listener, you're going to X out. So I had this dilemma, and I worked hard with my digital team, and we found a way to target podcast listeners by platform. So I have my ad run, and it's targeted towards people, for example, that listen to podcasts on Apple. So it clicks to my podcast on Apple Podcasts. And the Spotify, the one that targets people that listen to Spotify or iHeartRadio, whatever the platform is. And I'm not going to be able to get super obscure ones, but the big ones I'm going to be able to get. It'll click to my show on that platform. Even able to get that targeting down to where it's clicking somewhere that they already listen to podcasts. So I'm going to be able to hit them with, they are interested in podcasts, they're interested in my topic, and they listen on this platform, so that's where it clicks. And it goes straight to my show on the platform they listen to. I'm going to get a minute of it, right? I'm going to get a little bit of time with them. That's the biggest step that I made, really, was that. And then really promoting with turning that to the shorts, the clips, the sound bites, the video clips. Such a big deal. Riverside started doing clips for us in that platform. And
so you use Riverside?
Yes, I use Riverside, and I do video, and they make it very easy. They don't do a ton of video editing, but just adding your brand stuff in and taking out the breaths and having the layout automatically pick who's speaking to be prominent. Those types of little AI upgrades that they've had, and they've added live even, so we don't have to switch to do a live somewhere else. Really incorporating, and they added that clip thing to dig into Opus Clips, which is a big podcasting tool that people use. And so I hope they keep all of them because I'm using those, and they do a great job of generating clips and just really posting those without them seriously branded, even with a message. Helps build views for your show because you put that on the same playlist as your show. They're clips from and that builds up that whole audience and helps get new listeners over to it as well. But honestly, I don't know how many episodes you have, but I have been told by many, many guests that have much bigger shows than I do that you have to hit 100 episodes for the algorithms. It's one thing, having 67 episodes puts me in the top 5%, right? Because so many fail. But for the big algorithms, for Google, for Safari, for Yahoo and Bing, and all of the search platforms to really pay attention to you. For me, when they search for entrepreneurial podcast, for example, for me to show up in the algorithm, it 100 episodes is kind of the magic number that multiple other show hosts that have a lot more episodes than me have said. And the same is true as guesting. So if you're going to be a guest to promote, say, a coaching or a book, and you don't have your own show, but you're promoting that way, which is a great way to promote, but you don't have control over when the episode airs. And some big shows are scheduled out really far.
Yeah.
And your name still has to show up in the search to really promote you. So they really say 100 guest spots is a number when the big marketing algorithms, the search algorithms start picking you up and showing you as an option for your podcast. So don't have 100 of my own episodes or guest episodes yet, so I can't
Yeah.
confirm it.
Very soon you get to have either one of them very soon. You're on your way there now.
Yes, I'm getting closer, and I'll be launching a coaching platform later this year, and so I'd like to all kind of hit serendipity at once.
Yeah.
So
So
I build that
if
momentum up, and then it's perfect timing.
if you don't mind me asking, you talk about podcast guesting. Like, how did you incorporate that into your strategy? How many guests, podcasts do you guest on, like in a month or like in a year?
Well, so I didn't realize I was going to be so successful at getting myself booked. So
Oh,
I was just really, I worked on my brand. I got my promotional photos, very marketable, and I found a platform that I like to use. There's multiple different platforms where you can put a guest profile up. There's also agencies that I must have hit a platform on my show because I have agencies sending me potential guests all of a sudden. It's probably 50 episodes. Right. So I worked on that, my personal media kit with my headshots and sample questions. I like to use Podmatch is a great platform, but being able to target your brand towards the type of people that are going to sell whatever it is that you're selling, because we're not on the show necessarily for fun. You and I have drive, so we like each other, but it's not, you don't go on lots and lots at once for fun. It's time
yeah,
consuming. So I joined Podmatch, and then I really worked on that profile and I worked hard on my title episodes, sample questions, my own brand, my own story, polishing my story. I go in and so I appeal for a handful of different types of podcasts based on different things in my life history. And I will go in and change up my marketing keywords
yeah,
to new ones to see if I can attract attention from another type of podcast so that I can get a guest. So I started like around May of last year, so May 2024. And I really hit and started booking. And I would just fill in days when I had it available, not realizing how I was really cramming in a bunch of them at once that were going to drain me. But I pretty solidly until November. And then I had to rebrand as solo host, and that took a lot of time. So I stopped trying to get booked for a few months. And I've only been on a couple this month, for example, because I've been so focused on my own show, getting the nuts and bolts up and running from my rebrand. And I think I've scheduled on 43 different podcasts as a guest, then
oh,
so less than a year in about 9 months. And
yeah.
the
So
without actively really trying. If I got asked to be on one, I of course would, but I didn't actively pursue it, even on the platform, because I was just busy and monitoring my time on what I spent it on. But it
yeah,
is an effort you have to put out, even when you're on a platform like Podmatch that has show pages and guest pages. I get a lot of guests on that platform as well, and it'll give you matches based on your profile versus a show profile. But even on that, it's important that your profile conveys your brand in a way that people want to have you as a guest,
yeah,
that they
yeah,
can see it's more than just your story of how you're not a housewife anymore, or your story of, I've actually had a marketing podcast tell me, we don't care about your story. We've only got
mm,
15 minutes and we want to, hype things up. They want excitement. I was like, oh, you want to make people angry? Well, I can do that. Knowing what they really specifically are looking for. So you
Yeah,
can look, you can't really base it always on what episodes are airing because you don't know how far scheduled out they are. I
yeah,
recorded an episode for a daily podcast. So they put episodes out every single day. And I recorded an episode for them in December, and it does not air until May. Now, how they got that far ahead on a daily podcast, I was
wow.
so.
What's the name of the podcast?
It is, I think it's called How to Founder.
How to Fund that? Oh,
Who Found Her, I think is the name of it. And so I was only on a couple in December, but she really likes the back end and editing. So she recorded a bunch of them and then got caught up editing them all. I don't have time for that, but I will eventually be pretty far ahead just by virtue of recording. You know, you record
yeah,
so many a week, you eventually will get ahead. But
yeah,
I was also off the air when I was rebranding as solo host. I went in cold. We it had to build momentum again and to get that
yeah,
far ahead. So when you're
yeah,
being a guest, you kind of have to take that. If I were thinking I'm going to promote the start of my new season, well, heck, I will be many, many episodes in by the time that episode airs.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's true.
you'll build up momentum if you're a guest. So, what I see a lot is somebody has a new book or a new coaching platform or something new that they're promoting. And so they're hitting it hard and they're going to be a guest for the next 3 months, maybe on as many as they can get. And so you'll
Mhm.
run through and do lots of guest episodes, and then they'll be with this agency, and then they'll go to this platform, and they're just trying to hit as many and hit that magic number where now they're showing up in all the search stuff. I see that a lot, and I like that for it's like the campaign thing I like, right? I'm
Yeah,
working
yeah.
specific
It,
goals.
it's it's one thing about being a marketer. Once you see people, you just don't see things. You start seeing, wow, so this is the marketing strategy behind this stuff.
Yes, and I have the unique ability to see the forest and the big picture, even and the marketing campaign, even when it's something that people don't realize it's a marketing campaign, like something the government's doing. Well, that's the
Yeah,
marketing campaign that they're selling it with to everybody. That's not the real reason they're doing it. That's the market,
yeah,
but all you see is the presentation of it out on this side. I can see the motivation behind usually and why they're doing
yeah,
it that way. It's both
yeah.
a gift and a curse, my friend, a gift and a curse.
Once you know it, you can't unsee it. It's just there. You look
Mhm.
at it and you start seeing things that are beyond the obvious.
It is. And I mean, it's great. It definitely helps, with promoting my own stuff. And I was really just going on podcasts promoting my own show, not thinking about, well, if I had a lead magnet, I could be capturing their email addresses and then I could market them from my
Mark,
sell my I wasn't thinking in those terms because I wasn't thinking I was going to book so quickly but it didn't take long at all for me to realize the untapped
yeah,
potential. And I have a free ebook now that I offer to when I'm a guest and then to of course my listeners also. And so it serves as great informational. It's 5 steps to having a mindset for success. The exact 5 steps I took to change my life. I'm not a
yeah,
counselor, not a psychologist. It's what I did and my
yeah,
rationale, how and why it worked for me and how I incorporate it into marketing. But it's just a quick ebook. And so and I'll give the link so your listeners can get it too. But they
yeah,
download it, and to download it, you have to give me your email address. And so now I have,
yeah,
and I can send you more information that'll be helpful so you can listen to my podcast. And if I have something that I think is appropriate for you to purchase, I might send that to you. So having that, now you can really take advantage. And some people will have a free quiz that helps people understand why they do something their way. I had a
yeah,
tutor. He did a lot of online tutoring and he could do it on Zoom nationwide. So he could have an academic planner so people can
yeah,
download It'll be helpful. So those kinds of lead magnets are really effective when you're being a guest on a podcast or even with your own show, so that you can engage and further communicate with your audience about all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's amazing how time flies when you're having an engaging conversation.
I say
I'd
it
love to.
often on my show too, because boy, it goes fast when you're really at it, right?
Yeah, sometimes you start wondering like what's happening. Like before you even say talk about two things, like it's gone. Like wow.
Yep.
Quickly, I wanted to quickly share with the audience, like if someone is listening right now and they could only take one action today to improve their marketing strategy, what should it be?
Targeting. It would definitely be targeting. And what I
Oh,
mean by that is really honing in on who your potential customers are. And part of that you're going to look at who your current customers are. And they talk about not putting us all in categories. We're all human beings, but for this purpose, you need to categorize them. Who are they? Are they married? Are they single? Do they have children? What do they do for a living? What are the commonalities and what are the differences, so that you can find your specific ones? Once you know who they are, then communicating, deciding, oh yeah, those people always call when we have a discount. Now you know
yeah,
these families, they respond to discounts. That's
yeah,
entirely different than this other group over here that's also your customer. So identifying that and being able to communicate it to content creator or an ad rep, whatever it is, if you can communicate that to them, then they will do a much better job for you when they're making your content, because you've told them so much about what you're using that content for. So that's really the biggest first step that you can take, is figuring out who they are. And sometimes when you start a business, you have in your mind that you're going to sell to a certain group of people, and it turns out that you haven't. It doesn't mean that they're not a good group of prospects. Maybe the messaging is wrong. Maybe you're looking for them in the wrong place. So it merits looking at groups that you haven't sold to that you think have good possibility, because chances are, if you think there's good possibility, that they are a good target for you. You just need to work on the messaging and where you're finding them.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. I like the way you so much simplified and made it very actionable and practical. Where can our listeners connect with you and grab your free ebook, 5 Steps to Having a Successful Mindset?
My ebook and a great place to connect with me is on my agency website, which is hexagonmedia.net. You can also contact me at dealswithheels.com, my normal website. I'm on all the social media platforms because, again, it's my industry. Don't really interact with a lot of people on most of them, but LinkedIn's a great place to find me. And there's lots of information about my podcast and stuff on there. And my podcast is available on all platforms, plus YouTube. We host on Spotify, but it's on Apple and Amazon and all the places. So all of those places are a great place to find out more about me and download my free ebook.
Thank you so much for coming on the episode. I know that my listeners got so much value from this episode, and I did get a lot of value too, and it was a nice time chatting with you.
I appreciate so much you having time for me and letting me come on and be a guest and share all my stories and knowledge. I had a great time, and I hope that your listeners learned a little bit more about marketing.
That's it for today's episode of Wisdom Journey. If you found this insightful, helpful, and you learned a lot from this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your respective podcast listening platform. It really helps other persons discover the show. Yeah, keep creating, keep learning, and most importantly, keep sharing your journey. You never know who needs your wisdom today. See what I did there? Until next time, stay inspired and keep going.